Hello, welcome to the Yorkshire Film and TV Network, and we are also going live on our YouTube channel, Film Live, the show that takes you behind the scenes of the filmmaking journey. I'm your host, Leanne Collinson, and today we're going to be discussing how to take your idea to a network with award-winning ITV and BBC Executive Producer Caroline Roberts-Cherry. Caroline is one of my favourite people, so thank you so much for talking with us today.
Hi Leanne, thanks very much for asking me.
Awesome. We're also going to be taking questions from the viewers, so if you're on our website, and I'm going to try and get to Facebook and YouTube as well, but there's just me and Ben because of isolation. So if you put in a question, I can't get to everyone, I'm sorry, but I will try my very best. But to get the ball rolling, can you tell us, how creative have you been during lockdown? A lot, I am an artiste. B, a little, and when I feel like it, and C, not a lot. The artist block sucks. So we've got the poll that'll be coming up on screen shortly. So yeah, so Caroline, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how creative have you been during lockdown?
I like to think that I'm an ideas person and I enjoy writing, I enjoy reading, I enjoy brainstorming. But some days it has been really hard to be creative, and I think you have to be kind to yourself actually. So on some days I think it's creative enough if I've been able to follow a recipe and kind of produce a nice meal. And I know that sounds like quite a low bar, but then the next day it will be that I'll be talking ideas with someone and manage to, write something, get something pitched. But I think what I've found is that people are really looking out for each other in the industry, and I think you can tell if someone's having a bad day by what they maybe post on social media or just when you're chatting to them. And I've kind of had different connections with people since lockdown, partly because I think the industry is being very supportive amongst ourselves, which is kind of really needed.
That everyone's been really supportive, and it's quite nice that it's an industry that I suppose we're so technological, and technology is bringing everyone together. So it's quite nice that people are able to just jump on a Facebook call or a Zoom call or a Skype call to be able to connect and to share creative outlets as well. I mean, TikTok's boomed recently. Have you got a TikTok account, Caroline?
No, and I wouldn't put myself in that category of technically adept or a technology leader. So I was very pleased I was able to get my parents, talk my parents through doing a Zoom call. So I think that's my level, I would say.
Well, I suppose connecting is connecting, right? And can you tell me a little bit about how you got into the industry? Because you're an executive producer, and you can't get higher than an executive producer, really. And how did you start? And can you just talk me through that journey?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at a college where there was a kind of work experience scheme that I could apply for to go directly to what was then London Weekend Television. And it was at a time when it was very unionised and quite hard to get into TV, and certainly to get work experience. So it was on the ground, just learning. I had 3 months on the South Bank show, so the arts show run by Melvin Bragg. So he was literally my first boss. And then I worked on various other shows at London Weekend Television, including Saint and Greavesy, which was the iconic football show, and the 6 o'clock show, which had Paul Ross, Sebastian Scott, Danny Baker, people like that on it at the time. And then my first kind of proper salaried job was as a researcher on the youth programme Network 7. And it was an amazing experience because the team was very young, and when we were asked to do something by our producers, we assumed that we were being asked to do something that was actually possible, and achievable, and that's a really good learning curve. It was also a live environment, and so I discovered what a truly, truly dreadful presenter I was in a live situation. So it was really good to get that on-screen stuff out of the way very, very early on. And it was really clear to me that what I was interested in was the research and finding those stories, connecting with people. And that was the line that I went down after. So it was basically different organisations, researcher, assistant producer, producer, series producer. Just it's all I've done TV, so I've had enough time to kind of work on different shows and work my way up.
Awesome. And you've worked for a number of networks, haven't you? And now you've got your own production company, Saffron Cherry Productions.
Yeah, so Saffron Cherry Productions kind of evolved from Saffron Cherry TV, which was just me. And Saffron Cherry Productions, now what we do is some scripted projects as well as children's. So we've done documentaries. So the last documentary that we did was called Dot's Farm, part of the Great Staycation, which was kind of network series split across the regions. We got to film with like a fantastic woman on Shawfold Farm in Lancashire. That was a great documentary to make. Other documentaries that I've made in Saffron Cherry Productions include one, Emmeline Pankhurst, The Making of a Militant, and we've done drama such as I did a 3-hour film of King Lear, which was based around the Royal Exchange Tallower theatre production. So 3-hour film that was in cinemas and it was on BBC4. But I also head up an ITV quiz label in Manchester, which is called Man Possessed, and we make quizzes, we make game shows. So I've done quite a lot of work for ITV over the last 2 or 3 years on quiz.
Portfolio, it's, I don't know, I'm so excited. I went to the Emile Pankhurst launch, I think it was, and that was on, was it International Women's Day that you launched it a couple of years ago, and the buzz in the room was amazing.
Yeah, it was. We screened it. It was actually the end of March that we screened it in at the Radisson, which was the Free Trade Hall, which was where there were a lot of suffragette kind of key moments, and it was a really special occasion. The presenter Sally Lindsay was there. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, was in attendance. There was a Q&A. There were about 400 people there, and it felt a very special night to be part of something in Manchester, and to just be marking Emmeline Pankhurst in that way with a whole room full of people. And you realise actually it's not very often that you get to see your work, but with a whole body of people like that. And it really made a difference to all of the camera people, the editor, and everything to have that appreciation. So I think screenings are a wonderful idea.
Much fun, but I mean, I suppose if it was launched now, it'd be a completely different situation because of lockdown. I was just wondering if pitching had stopped because of lockdown. And do you know if anybody's pitching TV shows remotely at the moment?
Well, I've certainly pitched quite a few, and stuff has been commissioned. A lot of stuff's been commissioned. I was watching the ITV lockdown dramas, the short stories that were on last week, and that's all happened and been shot in lockdown. I think there are loads of extra programmes that have come on in terms of what BBC Education is doing. There's the Daily Show on BBC One. Jack Monroe's got her cookery slots away, which has been really good to see. And I think the big channels have really been adapting and hopefully giving people what they want, but also maybe more of an appreciation for how important entertainment, in particular entertainment, drama and comedy, is for bringing people together, as much as we do obviously need all the current affairs, all the journalism and all of that side as well. But I think it'll be interesting to see what it is that people want to see when they come out of it. And certainly a lot of the feedback that I've been getting is anything that's set now that needs to be filmed now but then transmitted later, that's a kind of big no-no. I think people don't necessarily want to see what we're going through put across in an entertainment or drama format, and I think that's understandable. I've been watching so much comedy and things like drama that I might have chosen to watch before. If it's too apocalyptic or too distressing, it's just like, no, maybe for another time. So yeah, a lot of comedy box sets.
Yeah, I think comedy is gonna, I suppose, it's really uncertain times. I think people look to comedy and drama, but light drama, to be able to lift them out of that deep, I suppose, not depression, because I don't know if that we'll have like mass depression, but yeah, it'll lift people out, and I think it's really important. I can see a few people online though that have tuned in. We've got David Storm Chaser Clayton, we've got James Meller, hello, Azia Mohammed, and Brief Sitcom, Emma Turner. So I can see a few people. Camilla Heather. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. So we've got a few people that have tuned in via our website. Caroline, do you know when it's likely to pick up again anytime soon, the pitching process?
I honestly think people are pitching now. They're pitching a lot, and particularly, I think if you're a drama commissioner or a comedy commissioner, particularly if you're in London and you've now not got an hour, 2 hours travel every day, I've actually found that people are getting back really quite quickly and they're reading things. People obviously aren't being dragged into loads of meetings all the time. So I think people are genuinely trying to respond to producers as fast as they can, because, you know, we all know what boat we're in, what this situation is. And people want something to be positive about, don't they? They want to kind of be looking forward to when we can get back into production and what will that production look like. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pitching going on at the moment.
Awesome. It's great for producers and people wanting to make content to get some fresh ideas out there. And you work in both Manchester and London. Is the feel the same, do you think, in terms of how much is being pitched and what the genuine energy is like in the north and the south for getting back into production?
Well, I mean, there are obviously more commissioners down south than there are in the north in general, but I think the appetite is the same across the industry. You know, we want to feel that we've got an industry to return to apart from anything, and I think, you know, unfortunately, a lot of people in telly have fallen between all of these different help schemes, and the downside of it is obviously it's underlined to a lot of people how precarious the life of a freelancer is. So I think the careers advice that people will be giving now is possibly different to what they might have been saying going into schools or colleges last year. So, you know, it is not a stable industry. It never has been, but I think it's particularly acute now. Sorry if that's a bit gloomy.
No, but I suppose I'm quite optimistic, or I try to be, and I do think the fact that you did say that commissioners are looking for new content still, because I kind of expected you to say no. people have been furloughed, they're not looking for new content at the moment. It'll resume roughly around this date, but the fact that you're able to still pitch is actually makes me think that they do want new content, which is, it's actually really nice to hear that. It gives a lot of new blood a chance, maybe.
Yeah, I'd hope so. And I think, one of the things that hasn't changed about development and the skills that you need to develop, I think that people who stick with it and stick with ideas and, try and get them into the best place possible, is you mentioned optimism. I think you have to have the optimism of Pollyanna, but the rind of a the hide of a rhinoceros to keep going, because you just have to get used to so much rejection before something lands.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do have a couple of questions over Facebook for you, Caroline. If you're a relative newcomer with a strong idea, what's the best approach to a production company to access the commissioners? And how should best someone approach your production company? I don't know. What do you think? That's Tony Oldham that asked that question.
So commissioners don't commission individuals, they commission production companies. So I always say to people to find a production company who makes what it is or something similar to what it is that you want to pitch, and also a company whose values align with yours. I think that's really important, that you trust the people that you're taking an idea to, as you need to be able to share it to an extent to work out whether the production company is interested in taking it on, and to work out if you can work with that person at the company to develop it further. Not all companies, in fact the majority of them, don't accept unsolicited ideas, for the very simple reason that if you're developing, I don't know, a quiz set in a sweet shop, and somebody sends you a quiz set in a sweet shop, it's very hard to kind of go, no, the two are completely unrelated. So I think the bigger the company is, the less likely they are to take unsolicited ideas. But you should kind of do your homework with PACT, our industry body, and find out which production companies are near to you. And I think, we all want to kind of help bring on the next lot of TV makers, the next lot of talent. And you're more likely to do that if it's someone, in your region, I would think. So I always prioritise stuff that I know is coming from the north in terms of, when I read it. So I've got a scripted project at the moment, actually, that somebody contacted me, and the connection was he'd been at Huddersfield University, and I was largely brought up, as you know, Leanne, in Huddersfield.
Yep.
And it was just something about his writing and the confidence in, that there's definitely something there. And I don't think I kind of would have, would I have read it as quickly if it had come from Lowestoft? I don't know, maybe that's a bad thing to say, but he was writing about a world that I knew, and all the reference points rang true. So that kind of worked for me.
I suppose it is making that personal connection with a script. It's got to be a good script, but if it can make a connection with you, it's easier for you to sell and pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that, if I'm reading a script, I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to see it, and I need to be vested enough in the characters to start casting it in my head whilst I'm reading it. And I felt that way about this script that I read.
Yep.
And that's
Brilliant.
Quite recent. Yeah.
And we're getting a few other questions through. So Rebecca has said, is it okay to pitch to more than one production company at once?
Yes, just don't get caught.
That's a good answer. Tony also
It's true
thanked
for
you.
most things in life.
Yeah, that's true as well. Tony thanked you for his answer as well. And I'll just flip over back to my questions. So can you explain to everyone what the commissioning process is like from when you first get the idea right through until the production is greenlit and it's going ahead? Please.
Okay, well, how long have you got? That's usually a massive, massive long thing.
Yep.
So, is it easier if I focus on one idea to talk about how we did get something away? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that'd be...
Okay, so I think you've got a clip of the Emmeline Pankhurst documentary. So I'm going to talk about that. So in 2017, early 2017, we realised that obviously 2018 would mark the Representation of the People Act, when women over the age of 28 and property owners were given the right to vote. And so we started pitching to all channels different versions of a documentary about Emmeline Pankhurst. And the reaction that we got was, and I won't be specific to each channel, but it varied from our viewers won't have heard of her, to it's too well known a story, to it's too niche. And it was so frustrating to think that something could be too well known and yet too niche and also not of interest to anyone, when you're actually talking about, you know, human rights in this country. But we kept going and we kept thinking of different ways to approach it. And eventually we pitched it in the context of it being a Manchester story, it being a Northwest story. And it was about we changed the lens of it to make it, what was it that made this woman, this mother, decide that this was what she felt was more important than anything else. So we tried to tell it in a human way, but also to look at what was it about Manchester. Was there something specific about Manchester that might have been part of the DNA of Emmeline Pankhurst? And so we originally pitched it. So we then went on to pitch it, to BBC One Northwest, and that was about having pre-existing relationships with a couple of key people there who could see that it was of particular regional significance to do the story. It was then important that we had the right person on it to tell that story from a position of empathy, but also exploration and wanting to kind of ask those questions that a punter would ask at home. So I approached Sally Lindsay, who I'd worked with before and I'd known for quite a long time. I knew she was in Panto and likely to be keeping very funny hours when I wrote her. And I spent ages composing this email as to all of the reasons why I thought she'd be perfect and why BBC One Northwest thought she'd be perfect. And I sent it off, and almost like faster than someone's out of office reply comes back, she just replied going, "Mate, I'm in." And I was like, oh, right, can you actually read it? Because but the fact it was Emmeline Pankhurst was enough for her. But anyway, it was a really, really, I like to think, successful collaboration. And she did ask those questions and reveal things. And when she was confronted with the archive or particular personal letters, so we didn't give her everything all in a one. So she was reading things for the first time on screen. And because it was Sally and she's got such a broad appeal, but it was this kind of historical subject, we were able to bring masses of different types of viewers to it, which was, of huge pride. So it went out first on BBC One Northwest, and then it got a slot on BBC Four, which it was against the first televised England game in the World Cup. So I'm not too sure how many women, I know it's very sexist, were able to touch the controller that night. But then after that, we made some short films also from the same material for BBC Education. Then we were commissioned by a distributor to make an hour-long version, which has been sold internationally. And then Andy Burnham, because he felt it was such an important Manchester story, he basically licensed the DVD. And so a DVD was launched and sent into every Greater Manchester secondary school so that they had their history. So from the huge frustration of not being able to get something commissioned after 9 months of pitching, then it went the other way. And I think that's about what's that kind of USP that you're offering? What are those relationships that you have already with people that you can bring into play? And how to connect with as many people on different platforms as possible. So one of the, and I am going to stop talking. One of
it's all good.
Points of doing one of the points of doing that big screening was to kind of test the ground for what the interest and appetite was. So 400 people came to the screening. There was a wait list of 150, and we had a hashtag on all of the TX cards that said "Be More Emmeline," and because there was like really strong visuals, it ended up trending in Greater Manchester that night, and then it was something that we could build on for transmission. So that's probably one of the most joined up approaches that I've been involved in.
Yeah, I think we've got the trailer for that as well, so we can play the trailer so everyone can kind of relate to what you're speaking about if you haven't already seen Emil Pankhurst.
I'm Sally Lindsay, and as we celebrate 100 years since women finally got the vote that they fought and they died for, I want to find out the true, gritty Mancunian story, the blood, sweat and tears behind this mythical figure. The loves, the losses, the political passions, the family tragedies that turned this woman into the leader of an army of women. This is the story of Emmeline Pankhurst, the making of a militant.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually got to watch that as well with everyone in the room over in Manchester. So it was just a really, like I said before, it's just an amazing buzz. But it was such a long journey from the initial idea to be able to get commissioned. There's a few more questions coming in as well online. I can see Rob Speranza, he's online, and a few people are saying how much they adore Sally Lindsay as well. I think she is just an icon. I don't know, everyone loves her, don't they? And let's have a look. So the questions that we've...
Too.
Yeah. And some of the questions that we've got are, what advice would you give to a new production company in pitching a new reality-based competition? Which I think is similar to what you said before. Would it be going as a production company or joining with an established production company, I suppose?
So there are production companies, very new production companies, that get things away, and completely hats off to them. It's normally, in my experience, they've had the idea before they've set up the production company, or they've talked to a commissioner about it beforehand, so they know that there's an appetite there for it. Reality really isn't my area of... not that I'd claim to have expertise, but like I really have no expertise in reality. So all I'd say is, the annoying question that you always get asked by a commissioner is, why now? And behind that is also, why you? So if you have something special that's unique to you, or in terms of access or relationship with talent, or you've got the best casting tape ever, then that's great, and try and make that work to your advantage.
Yeah.
And I think it will be interesting to see like what reality is going to evolve into. If you think about things like Love Island, that was, I think that was stood down was it last week? And it wasn't just the people being in close proximity. It was the thought that Kevin Ligo said of, when everyone's been locked up and couples who don't live together haven't been able to see each other, the thought of, to use his words, then watching a whole load of people slathering over each other perhaps isn't a tally that people would want to see. So I think that was a very appropriate decision.
But what do you look for in an idea then, Caroline? So if someone was going to approach your production company with either a drama or entertainment-based pitch, what is it that you'd look for?
So the script I've got when I start reading it, I've got to want to finish reading it, which sounds really obvious, but there are certain things that I'm personally not interested. So I'm personally not interested to read something which is an all male environment, what I like to call the kind of submarine film. So when I was little, they used to always have black and white films on the BBC on Sunday, and I would always switch off if it was a submarine, because I just knew there were never going to be any women on it. So, that's just my thing. I'm not that particularly interested in that. There are loads of other places, other companies where you can take that kind of completely male skewing idea. Something that is warm, something that makes me smile, and something that makes me want to find out more.
Yeah. It's and I know that you deal with entertainment and drama. Is there a difference in the pitching process for entertainment and drama?
Yeah, because obviously drama is based really on the script, and sometimes possibly on the cast. So that there was a drama last year where it was new writers for telly and new writers for ITV, but they had their leading lady signed up as part of the package. So sometimes it's the packaging of an idea, and with entertainment, it's much more about the formatting, and very often the host of the show is decided by the network, not by the production company. So I'd say that was one of the main differences between the two.
Okay. No, that's really interesting, because I know we've got a lot of people in the Yorkshire Film and TV Network that that have written scripts, or they are looking to write a pitch document. Do you recommend that people write the script before it's picked up, the actual idea's picked up, or do you think that the pitch is enough to be able to without the script? Did that make sense? I hope it did.
Yeah, I think most people, if they've got an idea, a drama idea, they do want to have a crack at writing the script to actually then be able to crystallise that down into the treatment. But all writers work in different ways. So two of the things that I pitched over this period, one was a drama and one was a comedy. We just wrote the treatment. We wrote the treatment and cast it, and we got all of the cast, really, really good cast, signed up, and that went in a pitch deck, which was maybe 15 slides. So I tend to do a PowerPoint, and just if you can't kind of crystallise the idea over 10, 15 pages, a bit like a certain 50-page document that came out today, it's probably not a very good idea.
Yeah. I remember I was pitching to iWorks in London when I was about 18, so I was really green, and I did a PowerPoint presentation, but it was called Bite the Bullet. That was the name of the game show that I was pitching. I think I actually sent it to you once upon a time, but it was one that you'd passed on because there were a couple of others, yeah. And and I had this really loud bullet sound in the PowerPoint presentation, and it just shocked the executives in the room. But I suppose I got their attention. They didn't pick it up either.
No, but they will have remembered you, Leanne.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. I didn't contact them since. Maybe I should just have a bit of a chat with them and say, hey, remember me, the girl that, nearly gave you a heart attack? But yeah, so I'll just jump back onto my questions. Why did you switch from entertainment to drama? Because you were initially doing entertainment, because I know that that's how we met. We met through game shows, and then now you're doing more drama. What made you switch?
No reason in particular. I mean, I suppose when I was at the BBC, I did a lot of quiz shows. I did a lot of game shows. Then I was the executive producer of Mastermind for 12 years. I did Question of Sport, many episodes of Question of Sport for about 8 years. But I was also doing other things at the same time. So I did documentaries about Elizabeth Taylor and the obituary for Pete Postlethwaite. I wanted to work in children, so I did Alicia's Street Dance Stars and a makeover show called I Want My Own Room. And I think when I left the BBC, it was an ideal opportunity to kind of do more of the things that I knew that I'd always wanted to do. But when you're in a big institutional organisation, you very often just end up doing very similar things. So it is one of the opportunities that I've been able to pursue, and I've been lucky enough that because I've got the quiz background that I can do the quiz for ITV. Really love working with that company, and then try and develop stuff under the drama and comedy umbrella within Saffron Cherry alongside the documentaries.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, I always forget that you spent so long doing Mastermind and Question of Sport, and they were the golden years as well, when television was BBC, and you'd tune in to watch Mastermind, Question of Sport. They were great shows. I suppose they still are, but they're just not the same. Because you did the children's Mastermind. You pitched, I remember a story you told me a long time ago, you pitched for Children's Mastermind, and that got picked up straight away. The commissioner instantly said yes.
Yeah, it was. It ran for 3 or 4 series, and it was a point where we were looking to expand both Mastermind and Question of Sport. So Question of Sport, it went into much longer run, and we kind of introduced loads of new games or loads of new rounds, and it was lovely doing the children's Mastermind. But it taught me a lot actually about question writing, that you have to have a completely different mindset, and it's not enough just to write questions about something to do with childhood. So we had one terrible question about a Steve bear, one of those antique German teddy bears, and I think the question writer thought, well, teddy bears are used by children, and it was just like, oh no, that was a good learning curve. But yeah, the kids were absolutely great.
The common question that seems to be getting asked, just I know Karen Stowe's asking it, Paul B's asking it, just on our website, is if you've got an idea and you're a newly formed company, or you've got that idea, how do they approach someone? Which you've answered this question before, but because we're getting the question again, I don't know if these people have just tuned in, but could you just sum up what, similar to what you said before, is how did they get it to a network? Like what are the steps?
Well, the commissioners are all published on channel websites, so see what genre they commission and try and match it. You know, what's the closest So, for an example, if you have a food idea and you think it should be on the BBC, previously you would have taken it to Carla Maria Lawson, because she does lots of food programmes. She's now the head of daytime and across everything. So it's look at who commissions what, and you can find that on the PACT website, PADT website. Also, Broadcast has got a commissioner index and commissioner green light, so you can see what type of shows someone on commissions. They're both, so Broadcast, you'd have to take out a subscription to them, and basically either make contact yourself, or if you choose to buddy up with another production company, commissioners will vary. But sometimes they'll say, we'll take ideas from anywhere, and genuinely they mean that. But for something on a really big scale, a really massive budget, if you're a first-time producing company, they might suggest that they help pick an exec producer for you, or they might suggest that you might be better being umbrellaed by a larger company, and that's really quite common. Or you could try and set up a co-production with a company that, as I say, you think you've got shared values, or you could possibly ask a company if they were interested to option the idea and for them to produce it, but you get some of the back end or the production fee. There's no one shape kind of fits all.
Yeah, and I suppose it is trust in that production company as well. Like you mentioned earlier, it's all about trust. I know that you picked up a couple of my game shows in the past, then that went under the option format with the BBC. That was back when I was 18 as well, and I was kind of just bombarding you saying, notice me, when I was still a student. I kind of just harassed you for a little bit, and look where we are today. So you pick directors as well, don't you? And you pick actors or presenters.
Yeah.
How do you pick an actor or a presenter for your shows? And is it a different process for entertainment and drama?
Yeah, I mean, there's a comic, I won't say who he is, that I've kind of followed for 5 years, and he's gone from doing really little gigs to presenting on loads of different channels, and I'm trying to come up with something for and with him, and that's based entirely on kind of a spark that I saw, and it's been absolutely joyous to see him go from starter to what he's doing now. I've actually also put him forward for an acting job for a friend of mine. So I think there's been a lot of Zoom read-throughs that have been sent in. So you've kind of got a Zoom casting tape script read-through. I'm aware that that's been happening a lot. And I think, if you have got a scripted idea and you can attract talent to it, as there are a lot of actors and comics at home unable to gig or work, it's a good way of doing it to record a Zoom read through. It was really funny, the one that I saw with the comic that I mentioned, and all of the first choice cast that the writer wanted, they were all available, and I think it's one of the best read throughs that I've seen, because it was all the people that he wanted, and everyone was wanting to make it work. So I think maybe to try and use this time to, if you can, develop your ideas and reach out to people and think about, you don't always have time to think about who's the best person for this, but actually now there is time to, be watching more tapes, to be doing more research about whatever it is that you're trying to get to the next stage.
Yeah, and I suppose everyone's available at the moment because you know that people are at home. So yeah, and it's now more than ever as well. It's easier to contact people. Like back when I was younger, I was just bombarding people with emails. But now you've got all the social medias as well, that if you want to get noticed, not just for pitching, but also for directors and actors or presenters. And so are the networks, are they commissioning new shows before 2021? Or is everything on they are commissioning? So I know that you said that you were pitching. They're still commissioning for the new year.
Yeah, they're still commissioning, and every week broadcast is kind of highlighting the commissions that are going through. So whilst it is very different, and you can't know that the spend is going to be the same, and certainly some networks have said there's across the board cuts, people are still commissioning. I think brilliant. That's important to remember.
Yeah, because I suppose television, it needs new content all the time, right? And it needs fresh ideas and fresh people to create them. It's a new blood industry. And so I'm going to wrap up there. I think that's all the questions as well from the public. There's some more questions. I don't think I can see them. I'm just looking for the questions now. So I might jump over to Ben to be able to go through the questions because I'm struggling to see them on my screen. So let's see what questions we've got.
So Azir, does a first-time writer need to have multiple samples of past scripts when pitching a separate new idea?
Okay,
so maybe I'm just very bad, but nothing kind of makes my heart sink more than someone sending me 25 different things and kind of going, you choose. It's like, you should know what is your best piece of work. And so I would say a couple of samples. And what is the key thing that you want to write? What is what's your vision? What's the one thing that you want me to be excited about? And I think everyone does know what that is. And I know it's very tempting to kind of go, well, she might not like that because it's about vegetarians, or she might not like that because it's got, a potter in it and she's got a weird thing about pottery. But that kind of spread betting when it comes to scripts, I personally don't think is a good idea. Just send someone your best work.
Yeah, that's a good question and good advice as well. And any more questions, Ben?
Obviously, all of the advice is it's only my opinion. It's not, that's just how I react when I get loads and loads of stuff all in one email.
Yeah.
We have a pilot already filmed. Would this help with the first pitch?
Easy answer, yes, and especially if it's good.
Awesome.
And if a production company chooses to move forward with an external idea, what happens next? Should they have an agent?
It depends what type of arrangement and on what kind of footing you've taken the idea to the production company. So somebody years ago optioned an idea from me for a penny, and I just had no rights, no connection over it whatsoever. So I think you have to be very clear with the production company about what your expectations are and what their expectations are. And it's so John McVeigh, who runs Pact, when I decided that I was going to set up by myself as an independent, one of the really good bits of advice that he gave me was, okay, however difficult it is to talk about money, and it is always difficult, you have to have those conversations up front, and then you have to have it in writing.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Do you think people should sign an NDA to be able to give someone else their idea?
Okay, so my youngest son is a gamer, and I think he'd probably signed more NDAs by the time he was 18 than I ever had been asked to in Tally, and it's still not actually that common. I kind of think, well, I don't know how enforceable NDAs and how do you actually pitch something if you're not able to talk about it. Other people might say differently, but if you have, an option arrangement, an option agreement, and there are some kind of fairly standard ones. But it does come down to do you trust the people that you are working with or potentially want to work with? Because if you don't, you shouldn't be working with them. And if you do, and they do something that, have you got the wherewithal to sue a production company? I would suggest probably not. So it's that working relationship that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I
and
know
again,
there's some.
I'm not a lawyer, so it's just how I operate.
Yeah, I know. Someone asked me to. They said without an NDA they weren't going to speak about the idea, but they were asking me to produce it, and I said, well, I can't produce something if I haven't seen the idea. And they said, oh well, I'll send you an NDA, and I said, but we're meeting for a coffee now, and she goes, well, how do I know I'm not going to steal her idea? And I said, well, we probably shouldn't be working together if that's what you think, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
I was rung up. Some random rang me up and basically said that he'd got the best idea ever and he'd got access to all of this money. And was I interested? So pretty similar. Was I interested in sharing with him how to get something commissioned and what were the next stages? And he'd never produced anything before, but it was such a random around everything in reverse type conversation. And at one point, I actually asked him if it was a wind-up call, because there's somebody that I know is really good at doing voices and ringing me up.
Yeah.
And he said, you TV lot are really suspicious, aren't you? He said, because I've been asked this several times already, and he didn't understand that what he was saying implied that all the trust should come one way and not be a kind of mutual thing. So everyone had reacted in the same way to this guy going, well, you're just making this up, and why do you think I would, it's got to be about trust.
Yeah, and people are very precious about ideas, and but if you don't give them away, no one can do anything with them. They just stay an idea, and that's really sad.
Well, I think the difference between an idea and a good idea is one that someone will give you money for it.
Yeah, definitely. And is there any more questions, Ben?
Couple more questions. Karen, how common is it for new production companies to ask for help from established companies to assist with pitching?
I think fairly common. A lot of it will depend on the idea, and what is the smaller, newer company asking? Are they asking for a whole load of expertise and contacts for nothing in return, or are they asking, could that more established production company, could it potentially umbrella them so that after one production, then potentially the newer company could go off and do stuff by themselves once the broadcaster had that kind of assurance that making production would give them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think co-productions are becoming more and more I suppose well known. There seems to be everyone, even networks are co-producing as well. So it's not. I think to team up with a bigger company is just going to help your case and get commissioned at the end of the day.
Well, I'm currently working in co-production with a much bigger company, which was necessary, but also creatively the right thing to do as well. Oh, sorry, yeah. That's our lighting's on a timer, which I'm not in control of.
You've got this beautiful halo effect going on now.
Right, just let me move. Just let me move.
Great. That's great backlighting. And we've got one more question, is it?
One more and then another one just snuck in as well. But
Okay.
this next one, fairly straightforward. What do you use for inspiration for ideas?
I read. I'd like to say I read a lot. I don't at the moment, if I'm honest. But I have always read a lot. And I watch a lot of TV. And sorry, I'm just trying to get this. I watch a lot of TV. I read generally, widely. But I'm surrounded by a lot of creative people. So it's basically talking to people and like what's of interest, what's making you laugh, what's making you think, what's making you angry. It's that kind of constant communication, and I know that's really waffly, but that's in some ways that's why you can read the same idea or very similar ideas within a similar time period, because we're stimulated by a lot of the same things. So I also think it's quite a good idea to read outside your kind of tribe, outside your comfort zone, so that you're coming up with things that are slightly different. I also really like puns, so I often think about, when someone's talking, I often think about what is the pun in what they've said, and loads of times I've developed ideas just off a title, and a title that's made me laugh, or just thought I could actually see that written down, and I could see that grabbing someone's attention.
Because you created the game show, like the brain training with Clive Anderson. For the BBC a while ago.
Brainbox Challenge, yeah.
Brainbox Challenge, because I remember you were telling me about that idea and how that idea came about.
Well, this is a really good example, I think, of why workplaces and teams should not be homogenised. So there was a woman who had come into the mastermind team, the mastermind family, through a special disability scheme, and she'd been on long-term disability following having a stroke, and she was a young woman. She'd had a really high-powered job, the Commonwealth Games, and she had a terrible all-over-body stroke, and so she went through rehabilitation, and because she was young, she got a lot of input and a lot of help. And she had to relearn every single thing again. So she told me the story that she was once in this stage trying to clean her teeth, and all of her sequencing and processing had gone. So she knew she wanted to clean her teeth, and she picked up the toothpaste and was like banging the toothpaste against her mouth, knowing it was wrong, but not knowing what all the steps were. So part of the rehabilitation was teaching processing again, and she showed me some of the word games that the trainers, doctors were doing with her, and it just sparked something in me that if you could train a brain to relearn things that we all take for granted, could you somehow format this with my shallow TV jazz hands and make a game show that had got a lot of play along capacity with it, but it wasn't a Q&A question and answer thing, but that people could actually play along with the games. And it was one of the most rewarding things I think I've ever done, both developing it, but always knowing where that original spark had come from. And so that's why I think it's a really good idea if you are surrounded with people that aren't an identikit version of you, because their experiences and their way of viewing the world will give you more perspectives, and it will give you more creativity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember you telling us that. This was when I was at university, because you came in to speak at Huddersfield University, and that's how we initially met. I remember you telling me that story, and I remember going and looking up the game show as well, and watching it thinking this game show is so hard. Like I couldn't do Mastermind and I couldn't even do Question Sport, but I couldn't do the other one. I was really struggling with all of them. Just I suppose my general knowledge in that great in my brain, using both left and right side of my brain as well. I was just struggling. But yeah, it was a really fun game show. So if anyone wanted to look that up online, I'm sure there'll be online for people to play along at home as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've got a question from James Mellor about budgets and for the shows that you, for the networks that you have pitched to and you've been commissioned by, what level budgets are they? And I suppose it's a really good question to work out how the budget side works as well for independent producers.
Well, the tariffs can be from, if you're doing something for BBC Education, for instance, an online bite-size whatever, it would maybe start at £500 a minute, and then you go up to some dramas that are 2.5, 5, 10 million per episode production. So that's quite a broad question to be able to answer in a forum like this. It's that there's usually published tariffs on most websites as to what they would expect to pay for different things. So you know that if you're doing a daytime quiz show, for instance, you need to do a volume of X to make the money stack up that you can do 3 a day or 4 a day. So it's really very much slot and genre dependent as to what the answer is.
Yeah, and I suppose there's different ways as well. Is it distribution where it's like pre-production, or is it development funding? And then so there's all kinds of different potholes and funding. I think the advice you gave earlier about buddying up with a bigger production company, just especially if it's your first production, to help steer you through that process, one that aligns with your values, really was really good advice as well.
Well, I think, if you're going to a bigger production company, they're going to have a head of production, or they're going to at least have a production manager that could sit and work through that budget with you and kind of go, well, that's not practicable, or, these are the things that you might need to take into account. This is where we could go for some development funding. Have you thought about trying to pre-sell to distributor, etc.? So yeah, that would be one of the main advantages of doing that.
Yeah, and I think we've got the results in from the poll that we asked earlier as well, I think. Have we got that? We do. That's going to be up on the screen right now for all those people. And I know that
55% a lot.
55%, a lot of people are being creative, so that's over 50% of our audience, which is absolutely fantastic. And
44 a little and 0 of not.
Oh, awesome. Everyone's being creative. That's what I want to see.
That's really good news. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
And then I'm now going to have to go and get creative in the kitchen because I have got a family to feed. So
that's all good. It's amazing to see how many creative people are out there, though, and we're so glad that you were able to share your knowledge with us, Caroline. It's really much appreciated. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to see what Caroline's up to, you can go to www.saffroncherry.com. And I think that website's going to be brought up right now. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. And hopefully lockdown will be lifted very soon, and we will see you at the pub at our next event. Fingers crossed. If not, we'll see you online next month. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Leanne. Lovely to talk to you.
Know that we have divided in 3 our kingdom, and 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age. Tell me, my daughters, which of you shall we say doth love us most? I will have such revenges on you both that all the world shall. I will do such things. Oh, let me not be mad. Not mad, sweet heaven.